Lesson 1-2, Understand Rational Numbers. Let's take a look at the solve and discuss it for this question. Calvin wants to customize his surfboard so that it is wider than the 82 model, but narrower than the 92 model. What measurement could be the width of his surfboard? Explain. So you see in the picture that we are looking at a model 82. Oops, let me try that again. There we go. And the model 92. And the problem says that it is wider than the 82 model, but narrower than the 92 model. So we're looking at the width of each of those and see if you can come up with an answer. In other words, what value comes between 22 1/2 and 23 1/4? Is there just one answer, or are there multiple answers? In this problem, it may be helpful to use a common denominator with the two mixed numbers. So changing 22 1/2 into 22 2/4 may make it easier to compare and find a number between 22 1/2 and 23 1/4. So what value could go in the box? Well, one of the easiest things to do is to recognize that a whole number appears between these two. So the whole number 23 could represent the width of Calvin's custom surfboard. Or we could pick any number that is bigger than 22 2/4, like let's say 22 3/4, and it has to just be smaller than 23 1/4, like 23 let's say 1/8. So in this lesson, we are going to not just understand rational numbers, but we're going to recognize them and be able to write them in both fraction and decimal form. The essential question for this lesson is, how are rational numbers written as decimals? Example 1 is going to show us how to take a rational number and write it in decimal form when it becomes a terminating decimal. Juanita is reporting on pitching statistics. Pedro's fastball statistic is 52/80. How can Juanita write the fastball statistic in decimal form? So taking a look at the picture here, because you know that these pictures always show us information that we need here, we are looking at his fastball statistic. So it shows me here that he pitched 52 fastballs out of 80 total pitches, which is where the fraction 52/80 comes from. Okay, the bar diagram here is just taking the information from the table. So they didn't do anything special there, they just copied that information from the table. But the way we change that fraction into a decimal is to divide. From your previous learnings, you should remember that fractions are actually division problems. So that fraction bar that separates your numerator and denominator actually serves a purpose. Okay, it is a division sign. So 52/80 actually means 52 divided by 80, or if you write the long division version, like I did right here, and the one that we're going to solve up here in the next step, is the 52 goes underneath that division bar, and the 80 goes on the outside. Okay, in this case, and in all cases with fractions, we have the numerator, and I'm going to write this out to the side here, goes underneath that division bar, and it's the denominator that goes outside. You're going to want to know that. Okay, in order to change a fraction into a decimal, you treat it like a division problem and you divide. In this case, when we divide 80 into 52, it does not go at all, so that's why there's a 0 in front of the decimal point. And notice that there's a decimal after the 52 and some zeros are added. So now we have to do 80 into 520, and the answer is 6, and 6 times 80 makes 480. And when you subtract, you get a leftover of 400. Then that second 0 here in the problem is brought down, and 80 goes into 400 5 times. 5 times 80 is 400, and when you subtract, you get 0. Anytime you have a remainder of 0, you have a terminating decimal. In other words, a terminating decimal is a decimal that stops. Okay, terminate means to end or stop. So Juanita can write the fraction 52/80 as the decimal 65/100. Now let's go down to the try it. The try it has all kinds of boxes there, and sometimes those boxes get a little bit confusing. So if you're confused with the boxes here in the problem, this part, then you can go ahead and skip those boxes and maybe just over here on the side do the same kind of work. Okay, make sure that you complete that long division. So in the next several games, the pitcher threw a total of 384 pitches and used a fastball 240 times. So here's our new fraction. 240 is our numerator, and our denominator is 384. So we're going to change that into a decimal by again doing that long division. So I want you to pause the video and try the long division. See if you can get a decimal answer for that fraction. Check your answer. Hopefully you got 625 thousandths, which is 0.625. You can see my work there and how I filled in the boxes to complete that long division. You will not be allowed to use a calculator in this lesson, so you will need to be able to do that division by hand. Now let's take a look at the convince me. How do you know that this answer is a terminating decimal? So what is the key here? Well, go back up to where you see the terminating decimal vocabulary word in the red box at the top of your page. Notice that we have a remainder of 0, and anytime that remainder is 0, then the decimal ends. If I can get my pen to work here. Okay, in other words, it terminates. Now let's move on to example 2.